You must be Elowen. I'm Leora. Merrick sent me. This house isn't yours. He's done with you. Move your things by Sunday or I'll move them.
The front door swung open before Elowen could even reach the handle. She hadn't touched it. She hadn't buzzed anyone in, and she definitely hadn't invited the woman now standing in the middle of her living room. Red nails, gold hoops, perfume so thick it was practically a personality. The woman smiled. Not the polite kind. The kind that says I already won and you don't know it yet. You must be Elowen, she said, rolling the name like it tasted cheap. I'm Leora. Merrick sent me. Elowen set her grocery bag down slowly. 2 gallons of milk. A rotisserie chicken. The kind of Tuesday evening a person has when their life still feels like their own. It didn't feel that way anymore. He said to tell you. Leora tilted her head, enjoying herself. This house isn't yours anymore. He's done, and you need to move your things before Sunday, or I'll move them for you. Elowen said nothing. Leora took that as weakness. She always did. Everyone always did. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps, hand raised, teeth bared, 6 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier than the quiet woman standing by the kitchen door. And then she was on the floor. She didn't see it happen. Nobody ever does. 1 second she was moving forward. The next she was looking up at the ceiling of someone else's living room, the back of her head ringing, the breath knocked clean out her chest. Elowen stood over her, perfectly still, breathing like she'd just gone for a light walk. Get up, Elowen said quietly, and get out of my house. Leora blinked. Her gold hoop earring had flown across the room. Her elbow was singing. Nothing about this moment made sense. From a coffee table, Elowen's phone buzzed. 1 new message. Merrick, did you handle my useless wife like I asked? Elowen read it, set the phone face down, then looked at Leora again, still sprawled on the floor. He's waiting for your answer, she said. And that, right there, is where this story really begins. Before we get into this story, if you've ever been told you were too quiet, too weak, or too small to matter, stay right here. Drop a comment below and tell me 1 word that describes your strength. And if this story hits you, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next will absolutely floor you. Now you might be wondering, who is this woman? Because the Elowen that Merrick knew, the one he'd spent 4 years calling timid, fragile, useless, that woman wouldn't have blinked twice if someone walked in and announced her eviction. She would have cried. She would have called her mother. She would have done anything to keep the peace. So what changed? Nothing changed. That's the part Merrick never understood. Nothing changed because the woman who put Leora on that floor in 3 seconds flat had been there the entire time. Waiting, breathing quietly, letting him believe the story he needed to believe. Here's a question for you, and I want you to really sit with this one. Have you ever made yourself smaller for someone who didn't deserve the full version of you? Because Elowen did. For 4 years, she did. And this is the story of what happened the day she finally stopped. Nobody tells you what the slow death of a marriage actually looks like. It's not one big explosion. It's not a screaming fight that ends with someone throwing a plate. Those things happen in movies. In real life, it starts smaller. A comment here. A laugh there. A particular tone of voice that your husband uses when his friends are around versus when it's just the 2 of you. Merrick Aldane was 41 years old, co-owner of a mid-sized construction company in Scottsdale, Arizona, and the kind of man who looked incredible on paper. Tall, broad-shouldered, quick to smile in photographs. His Instagram was full of job sites and summer barbecues, and pictures of himself in a hard hat looking like the cover of a magazine nobody could name. He was also the kind of man who, for years into a marriage, called his wife my little shadow in front of his mother, and laughed like he'd said something sweet. Elowen had smiled when he said it. She was good at that. His mother, Drusilla, had patted Elowen's hand and said, "That's what a good wife looks like, baby. You just stay in your lane and let that man drive." Then she'd gone back to her potato salad like wisdom had been dispensed. Merrick's business partner, a loud, barrel-chested man named Denton, had slapped Merrick on the back and said, "Man, she never argues with you. That's a unicorn. You keep her fed and she stays quiet. That's the dream." Everyone had laughed. Elowen had laughed too. She was very, very good at laughing at the right moments. What nobody at that barbecue knew what nobody in Merrick's entire world knew was that before she was Elowen Aldane, wife, homemaker, little shadow, she had been Elowen Vass, National Women's Black Belt Champion, 3 years running. The woman who had stood on a mat in Houston's NRG Arena at 23 years old with a gold medal around her neck and the roar of a crowd filling her lungs. She had put that part of her life in a box when she married Merrick. His idea, his request, delivered not as a demand, never as a demand, but as a concern. I just think he'd said early in their marriage, lying in bed and stroking her hair like she was something fragile, that all that fighting stuff is kind of intimidating. You know, it makes men uncomfortable around you. It makes me uncomfortable. Like I don't know if I'm your husband or your sparring partner. He'd laughed, like it was a joke. She'd laughed too, and then she'd quietly stopped training. She told herself it was a choice, that she was choosing her marriage over a hobby, that strong women knew when to put things down for something more important. She still did the breathing exercises every morning before Merrick woke up. She still had the muscle memory. For years hadn't touched that. But she'd stopped competing, stopped talking about it, stopped being that Elowen in any room he occupied. And Merrick, because he'd never bothered to ask about her life before she became his wife, assumed she'd always been exactly what she appeared to be. Quiet, gentle, manageable. He loved manageable. The late nights started in January. Not coming home until 10, 11 midnight. Phone always face down on the table. Showered the second he walked in the door, which, and every woman in this comment section knows this already, is not something innocent men do when they've just come home from a work site. Elowen noticed. She wasn't stupid. She had a degree in accounting from Arizona State, ran the financial books for his construction company for the first 2 years of their marriage before he'd slowly, gently, casually squeezed her out of that too. You don't need to stress, baby, let me handle it. And she had eyes in her head that worked just fine. She didn't say anything. Not first. She watched. She had learned, over 4 years, that watching yielded more information than confronting. Confronting made him defensive. Defensive Merrick was a wall. But quiet, patient Elowen, she could gather data like a forensic accountant going through tax returns. Methodically, completely, without anyone knowing she was doing it. The name Leora appeared first on his phone screen. Just a preview. Just 3 words, miss you too, when his phone lit up during dinner in March. He'd turned it over so fast he knocked his fork off the table. He'd said work stuff. Elowen had nodded and passed him the salt. That same week, she'd started keeping a notebook. Nothing digital. Digital left trails that could be explained away or deleted. A physical notebook. A small, dark green one she kept in the zip pocket of her gym bag in the back of the closet. The gym bag Merrick had never once opened, because he'd been the one to tell her she didn't need to train anymore. She wrote down dates, times, amounts, the $300 that came out of their joint account on a Thursday with no receipt. The dinner reservation she found in his email confirmation. A table for 2 at Merrick's favorite steakhouse on a Friday when he'd told her he was in a client meeting in Phoenix. The text thread she'd photographed from his unlocked phone one night while he slept. She'd been careful. She'd always been careful. Where a woman named Leora sent 17 messages and received 17 back, and not one of them was about concrete estimates or building permits. In April, she confronted him. Not dramatically, not with tears and thrown dishes. She sat across from him at the kitchen table on a Saturday morning, set her coffee down, and said, "Who is Leora?" Merrick's face did 4 things in 2 seconds. Surprise, calculation, anger, innocence. He landed on innocent. He was good at innocent. Leora? She's a project manager at the Camelback site. What? His voice was perfectly casual. Have you been going through my phone? And there it was. The pivot. The lightning-fast transformation from the one caught to the one wronged. I haven't been going through your phone, Elowen said. Then how do you know her name? His jaw was tight now. You're sitting here interrogating me on a Saturday morning like I'm one of your suspects. This is what I deal with. This is what I come home to. He pushed back from the table and stood up. I go to work every day. I pay every bill in this house. I have given you a beautiful life, and you're sitting here with accusations. His voice dropped, went soft and cold at the same time. That particular combination that always made her feel like the floor had shifted under her. You know what your problem is? You don't trust me. And that tells me more about you than it does about me. Elowen sat very still. She breathed. In. Hold. Out. Just like she used to do before a match. I'm just asking who she is, she said. And I just told you. She works on the Camelback site. He picked up his keys. I'm going to Denton's. I'll be back tonight. And maybe when I get back, you can figure out how to act like a wife instead of a detective. The door closed behind him. Elowen sat at the table for a long moment. Then she picked up her coffee, took a slow sip, and reached for her phone. She had an appointment to keep, not a marriage counselor. They'd already tried that. 3 sessions in, Merrick had decided the therapist was taking her side and walked out and never went back. This appointment was with her bank. She needed to get her own account in order, just in case. The account she found was not the one she'd expected. Elowen had always handled the household accounts, grocery budget, utilities, the joint savings they'd built together. What she had not had full access to was the LLC account, the business account that Merrick had slowly, over 2 years, shifted entirely into his name alone, removing her as a signatory with the explanation that the accountant said it was cleaner for tax purposes. She believed him. She wished she hadn't. Because when her cousin Blythe, a financial investigator who worked for a firm in Dallas and owed Elowen a favor from the time Elowen had loaned her rent money 3 years ago, quietly, discreetly, professionally pulled the thread, what she found made Elowen's hands go cold. Over the past 14 months, Merrick had been quietly moving money. Not huge chunks, nothing that would trigger immediate flags. Small amounts, consistent amounts, routed through a second account that Elowen had never seen. The total, accumulated over those 14 months, was just under $230,000. $230,000 from their joint savings. From a construction business that Elowen's organizational skills had helped build in the first 2 years of their marriage. From the house equity he'd refinanced 6 months ago without mentioning it to her until the papers were already signed. Where is it going? Elowen had asked Blythe over the phone, her voice very, very flat. Blythe was quiet for a beat. Elowen, tell me, there's a lease, an apartment in Tempe. It's not in his name. A pause. It's in the name of a woman named Leora Bennett. Silence. He's been paying her rent, Elowen said. Not a question. Rent, utilities, a car payment, and what looks like a joint credit card with a limit of $15,000. Blythe's voice was careful, measured, the way people talk when they know they're delivering something irreversible. Elowen, this has been going on for over a year. Elowen sat with that. A year. While she passed him the salt at dinner. While she laughed at his jokes at barbecues. While she got smaller and quieter and more careful, trying to save a marriage she didn't know had already been sold to someone else. Okay, she said finally. Okay. Cousin, what does okay? I need you to document everything, Elowen said. Every transfer, every account, every transaction. I need it all in a file. Can you do that? I already started, Blythe said quietly. I started the second I saw the first transfer. Good. Elowen looked out the window at the Arizona afternoon, the flat blue sky, the white-hot sun doing what it always did, just burning, indifferent over everything. I love you, Blythe. I love you too. And Elowen, Blythe's voice dropped. Whatever you're planning, be smart, be quiet, and be thorough. Elowen almost smiled. Quiet was what she did best. It was Drusilla who called her on a Wednesday afternoon in May. Merrick's mother, the woman who had told her to stay in her lane. The woman who had squeezed her hand at every family dinner and called her baby, while quietly, steadily, treating her like furniture that had been placed incorrectly. Elowen, I need to speak with you. Come to the house. Not could you come. Not when you have time. Just come. She went. Because that's what you did when you were still playing the role of the quiet wife. You didn't give anyone a reason to say you were difficult. Drusilla's house in Paradise Valley was big and clean and smelled like lemon furniture polish and old money. Merrick's aunt, Vernell, was already there, sitting in the good chair by the window with her arms crossed. Merrick's sister, Calla, was leaning against the kitchen doorway with the expression of someone who has already decided how this meeting ends. 3 women. 1 ambush. Elowen sat down. We know you've been asking questions, Drusilla began, folding her hands on the table like she was about to give a sermon. About Merrick's business. About his finances. About, she paused, choosing the word carefully, things that aren't your concern. I'm his wife, Elowen said. His finances are my legal concern. They are, Vernell cut in, when you're acting like a wife. When you're creating drama and going behind your husband's back and turning this family into a soap opera, they are not. Calla pushed off the doorway. Elowen, nobody is the enemy here. We just want this family to stay together. And the way you're going about things. What way? Elowen asked. Calla stopped. Tell me specifically, Elowen said, her voice so calm it was almost eerie. What way am I going about things? Because I asked my husband a question at the kitchen table and he walked out. I'd love to know what I did wrong. Drusilla leaned forward. My son is under a lot of pressure. He works hard for this family. He needs a wife who is a support, not a... He moved $230,000 out of our accounts. Elowen said it the same way she'd said everything else. Quietly, evenly, into an apartment he's renting for another woman. That's not pressure. That's theft. The room went still. Vernell looked at Drusilla. Drusilla looked at her hands. Calla looked at the wall. And that look, that 3-second exchange of, oh, she knows, told Elowen everything she needed to know about who in this room had known and said nothing. We told Merrick, Drusilla said finally, her voice lower now, to handle his situation quietly. To deal with, she gestured vaguely at Elowen this, before it became an embarrassment to the family. Deal with this. Elowen sat with those words. Let them settle. An embarrassment, she repeated. We suggested counseling, Calla said quickly. You suggested he'd deal with his wife. Elowen stood up slowly, smoothed her skirt, picked up her bag. So, I'm the situation that needs dealing with. She looked at Drusilla, this woman who had called her baby for 4 years with a warm hand and a cold heart. Thank you, Elowen said. This was very helpful. She drove home in complete silence. No music, no phone calls. Just the roar of the highway and the flat Arizona sun, and the growing understanding that there was nobody in this marriage standing on her side. Nobody except herself, and her notebook, and Blythe in Dallas, and the gym bag in the back of the closet that Merrick had never, in 4 years, thought to open. She pulled into the driveway, sat in the car for exactly 60 seconds. Then she went inside, opened that closet, and for the first time in 4 years, unzipped that bag. The black belt was still there, folded, a little stiff, but there. She held it in both hands for a long moment. They thought you were gone, she thought. They were wrong. She set it back in the bag, zipped it up, went to the kitchen, made dinner, and waited. 3 days later, Leora walked through the front door. That part you already know. The smile, the gold hoops, the perfume, the announcement that the house wasn't Elowen's anymore. What you don't know yet is what happened in the 60 seconds before Leora moved. Leora had done this before. She was confident in her size, in her anger, in the fact that she had once put a woman twice her age on the ground in a parking lot in Tempe over a man who wasn't worth either of them. She was fast. She was aggressive. And she had come into this house fully expecting to find a small, timid woman who cried at loud voices. What she found instead was someone standing at the kitchen door with the stillness of a person who had learned, years ago, how to read a room before a body ever moved. Leora charged, and Elowen didn't run. She didn't flinch. She read the angle of Leora's shoulder, the placement of her weight, the reach of those extended arms. One pivot, one grip, one clean, controlled throw. Leora went down like a building meeting a demolition crew. Not slowly. Not dramatically, just down, flat on the hardwood floor of the living room, the ceiling spinning above her, her elbows screaming, her pride in several pieces scattered across the rug. Elowen hadn't raised her voice, hadn't broken a sweat, had simply redirected the force that came at her and let physics do the rest. She stood over Leora and waited. What? Leora started. Don't, Elowen said. The phone buzzed on a coffee table. Merrick's message glowing on the screen. Did you handle my useless wife like I asked? Elowen read it. Let's sit. Then she looked at Leora on the floor, mascara smeared, gold hoop gone, the confidence completely drained out of her face and replaced with something raw and a little frightened. "Tell him you need to talk," Elowen said. "Tell him you'll call him when you leave." She walked to the front door and held it open. Leora got up slowly, one hand braced on a coffee table. She looked at Elowen with something that might have been respect and might have been shock. It was hard to tell on a face that was still processing what had just happened to her body. She walked to the door. "Stopped. He told me you were nothing," Leora said. Her voice was different now, quieter, like something had been knocked loose along with her pride. "He said you were weak, that you wouldn't fight back, that you couldn't." Elowen held the door and said nothing. "He lied to me too," Leora said, and she walked out. The door closed. Elowen stood alone in her living room. Her house. The house that Merrick thought he could take. The money he thought he could move. The woman he thought he'd broken. She picked up her phone. Didn't call Merrick. Didn't call her mother. Didn't call anyone yet. She opened her notes app and typed 2 words. Phase 2. 3 days after Leora walked out of that house with a bruised elbow and a shattered story, Merrick Aldane came home to a wife who was making pasta. That's it. Just pasta. Sauce from scratch. The kind that takes 2 hours and fills the whole house with the smell of garlic and crushed tomatoes. Music playing low from the kitchen speaker. Table set for 2. He walked in and stopped in the doorway. He had expected what? Tears. Packed bags? A locksmith? He'd sent Leora. He knew she'd gone. Leora hadn't called him back that night, which was strange. But he'd told himself she'd probably scared Elowen so badly that Elowen had gone to her mother's house to cry and regroup. Instead, he found his wife in the kitchen, stirring pasta, humming. "Hey," Elowen said, without turning around. "Dinner's almost ready." Merrick stood in the doorway for a long moment. "Hey," he said slowly. He sat down. He ate the pasta. He even complimented it. And for the entire hour they sat at that table, Elowen was warm, present, almost cheerful. And Merrick, because he had always confused quietness with ignorance, decided that whatever Leora had done, it had worked. He went to bed that night feeling like a man who had gotten away with something. He had no idea he was already 3 weeks behind. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Elowen was at her kitchen table with her laptop open, a cup of tea going cold beside it, when the unknown number rang. She almost didn't answer. Then something, instinct, or maybe just the particular frequency of that ring, made her pick up. "It's Leora." A beat of silence. "I know you don't owe me anything," Leora said. Her voice was different from the last time Elowen had heard it. The performance was gone. What was left sounded like a woman sitting in a car somewhere, talking fast before she changed her mind. "But there's something I think you should know. And I'm only saying it once, so don't ask me to repeat it." Elowen said, "Go ahead. I'm pregnant." The kitchen was very quiet. "He knows," Leora continued. "He's known for 6 weeks. He told me. He said that you couldn't have children, that you'd been told years ago, that the marriage was basically over anyway, that he was going to finalize everything, and we were going to—" She stopped. "Start again. He said we were going to start over. That's why he sent me to your house. He wanted me to scare you into signing papers fast." Elowen set her pen down very carefully. She was not going to cry. Not on this call. Not for this. "Leora." Her voice was steady. "Did he promise to marry you?" A pause. "Yes." "Did he tell you he loved you?" "Yes." "Did he tell you I was barren, emotionally unstable, and draining his finances?" The pause this time was longer. Word for word, Leora said quietly. Elowen almost laughed. Almost. Because those were the exact same words Merrick had used about his first girlfriend. The one before Elowen. The woman named Petra, who had called Elowen twice in the first year of her marriage wanting to warn her, and whom Elowen had dismissed because she was young and in love and certain that Petra was just bitter. She wished she had listened to Petra. "Leora." She kept her voice neutral, careful, like she was defusing something. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did Merrick tell you to come to my house? Did he specifically ask you to?" "He texted me," Leora said. "I have the text," he said, "and I'm reading directly. Go handle her. Make her understand she has nothing and this house isn't hers anymore. I'll send you what we agreed after." "He sent you money?" $3,000. "Same day. Zelle." Elowen wrote it down. "Date." Amount. Platform. I still have the text, Leora said. I have the Zelle confirmation. I have 6 months of messages. Another pause, weighted and strange. He told me last week he needed space. That the baby was complicated timing. That maybe I should look into my options. Her voice went brittle on that last word. That's when I realized. Elowen understood exactly what she'd realized. Do you want to share those messages? Elowen asked. Legally. Through an attorney. So they're on record. Silence. What would that do to him? Leora asked. It would mean he can't deny orchestrating the attack on me, Elowen said. It would mean financial misconduct is on record. It would mean a judge sees exactly what kind of man he is. She paused. And it would mean whatever he promised you, in writing, in texts, in front of any witnesses, becomes legally documented. Leora was quiet for a long time. He's going to destroy me if I do this, she said. He's already planning to, Elowen said. Not cruelly, just factually, the way you tell someone the weather. The only question is whether you let him do it quietly or you make sure there's a record. She heard Leora breathing on the other end of the line. Okay, Leora said finally. I'll send everything to your lawyer. But Elowen, she stopped. What? I'm sorry, Leora said. I know that doesn't fix anything. Her voice broke just slightly at the edge. I'm sorry. Elowen sat with that for a moment. Take care of yourself, she said. And she meant it. And take care of that baby. Whatever else is true, that child is not part of this. She hung up, sat back, looked out the window at the Arizona afternoon. Then she picked up her phone and called her attorney. Her name was Waverly Osei, 44, sharp as a paper cut, former prosecutor who had left the DA's office to specialize in marital financial fraud and domestic abuse cases. Blythe had referred her. Waverly had reviewed Blythe's financial documents, listened to Elowen's summary, and said 3 words, "This is beautiful." Not the situation, the file. Waverly, Elowen said when she picked up, "I have a new witness, and she's bringing receipts." Waverly was quiet for exactly 1 second. Then, tell me everything. The full picture landed on a Tuesday morning. Waverly had pulled everything together, Blythe's financial documents, the account histories, the business records, and laid it out in a call that lasted 40 minutes and left Elowen staring at a number on her notepad that she had to write twice before her hand believed it. $268,000. That was the total. Not 230 as Blythe had initially found. More had moved in the weeks since, routed through a third account that Merrick had opened in the name of the LLC subsidiary. Money from their joint savings, from the house equity, from the construction business that had been built in its early years on the organizational systems Elowen had designed and implemented and then been quietly edged out of. He also maxed a credit card in your joint name, Waverly said. $41,000. Most of it in the last 8 months. Elowen stared at the number. Can we recover it? She asked. Most of it. The business funds, almost certainly. You have documented contribution, and he cannot prove you were legitimately removed as a stakeholder because the paperwork was never properly filed. The personal savings, yes, with the transfer records Blythe pulled. The house equity, Waverly paused. That one's messier, but not impossible. What about the credit card? We counterfile for the debt to be assigned to him entirely, given that you can demonstrate the expenditures were made without your knowledge or consent and for his personal benefit. Which, and Elowen could hear Waverly almost smiling. Leora's records confirm very neatly. Elowen put her pen down. For just a moment, she let herself feel the full weight of it. $268,000. For years of her life. Her carefully kept quiet. Her laughter at the right moments. Her folded black belt in the back of the closet. All of it treated like something to be emptied and walked away from. She breathed. In. Hold. Out. Okay, she said. What we do first? Merrick found out about the lawsuit on a Friday. His attorney called him. Waverly had filed that morning. Divorce petition, financial misconduct claim, asset recovery motion, and a formal complaint regarding the orchestrated attack on Elowen, supported by Leora's statement, the Zelle transfer record, and the text message that read, in Merrick's own words, "Go handle her." Elowen was at the gym when it happened. Not hiding, not waiting by the phone. She was on a mat in a training facility in Scottsdale that she had rejoined 2 weeks ago. moving through forms she hadn't touched in 4 years and finding, with a clarity that felt almost physical, that none of it had left her. Muscle memory is a faithful thing. It stays even when everything else gets buried. Her trainer, a compact, precise woman named Odessa, who had competed alongside Elowen on the national circuit 12 years ago, watched her run the sequence and said, "You didn't lose a step." "I lost 4 years," Elowen said. "Those aren't the same thing," Odessa said. Elowen's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Merrick. She let it ring. She went back to her forms. The call went to voicemail, and then he called again, and she let that one go too. By the time she left the gym, he had called 6 times and sent 3 texts, the tone of which escalated from "we need to talk" to "call me now" to something so incoherent with rage that it was almost illegible. She read all 3. Then she forwarded them to Waverly. More documentation. She texted. Waverly texted back a single thumbs up. Merrick Aldane was the kind of man who believed that things could always be talked through if he got to control the talking. Charm was his oldest tool. He had used it on business partners, on judges at permit hearings, on his mother when he needed her to side with him over anyone else in the room. He decided he was going to use it on his family. Sunday dinner at Drusilla's house was a monthly institution in the Aldane family. Extended family, neighbors, people from Drusilla's church, Denton and his wife. 30 people minimum. It was the kind of gathering where Merrick always looked best, surrounded by people who already thought well of him, holding his plate of potato salad like a man who had earned everything he owned. He had decided, in a fever of miscalculation, that this was where he would confront Elowen. Publicly. Where family pressure and social embarrassment would make her back down, drop the suit, and return to being the wife he designed her to be. He called her, told her to come. She came. What Merrick did not know, what none of them knew, was that Elowen had called Waverly on Friday night and asked a very specific question. "Can I share documented evidence with family and community members before the court date?" Waverly had said, "As long as it's accurate and you're not making false statements of fact, yes." Elowen had said, "Good." She walked into Drusilla's backyard in a white dress and flat sandals with a tablet under her arm and her cousin Blythe beside her. Blythe, who had driven in from Dallas specifically for this, who stood 6 feet tall in heels and had the expression of someone who had been waiting a long time for this particular Sunday. Merrick saw her from across the yard, and his jaw went tight. She crossed to the center of the gathering. Drusilla started to say something about the food getting cold. "I'll just be a minute," Elowen said pleasantly. "I think everyone here deserves to know what's been happening in this family, because some of you already know part of it." Her eyes moved to Drusilla, to Vernell, to Calla, and I think it's time for the full picture. She opened the tablet, connected it to the portable speaker Blythe had set on the table beside the lemonade. The first thing that played was Merrick's voice. His own voice, from a recording Elowen had made 7 months ago on a night when he'd stood in their kitchen and told her she was too stupid to understand business finances, too weak to manage a real career, too useless to contribute anything meaningful to the marriage. His words, his tone. In a kitchen she'd cooked 1,000 meals in. The yard went very, very quiet. Then came a financial summary. Not the raw numbers, but a clean, clear breakdown that Blythe had prepared, translated into plain English of what had moved, when, and where it had gone. Apartment in Tempe. Car payments. A joint credit card. $3,000 via Zelle to a woman instructed to come to the house and frighten his wife into signing divorce papers fast. Then the text message, "Go handle her. Make her understand she has nothing and this house isn't hers anymore. I'll send you what we agreed after." Merrick's voice. Merrick's words. Denton had gone the color of old concrete. His wife was staring at her hands. The woman from Drusilla's church, a stout and formidable woman named Celestine who had known Merrick since he was 9 years old, stood up very slowly from her chair and looked at him with the expression of someone recalculating every year they'd known a person. "Merrick," Drusilla started. "Don't," Celestine said. Not loudly, just firmly. "Let the girl finish." Elowen looked at Merrick. He had the look of a man watching the supports of his building give way in real time, trying to calculate which wall to brace against first, Which relationship could still be saved? Which version of charm worked in a moment where the recordings were still playing from a speaker next to the lemonade? I didn't come here for a fight, Elowen said. I came here because some of the people in this yard told me to endure, to be quiet, to stay in my lane. I want you all to know, she looked around the yard, slowly, at all of them, that I did. I was very, very quiet. And while I was quiet, I was also watching, documenting, and building a legal case that is now in the hands of my attorney. She closed the tablet. Enjoy the potato salad, she said. And she walked out of that yard with Blythe beside her, and the sound of Denton clearing his throat and Celestine saying, Merrick, sit down, because you and I are going to have a very long conversation, and not one person called after her to come back. He called at 11 that night. She didn't answer. He called again at 11:15, 11:30, midnight. She let them all go to voicemail. At 12:15, she played the messages back, partly because she wanted documentation and partly because some part of her needed to hear it. Needed to hear the specific sound of Merrick Aldane, who had called her useless at a kitchen table, who had sent a woman to frighten her out of her own house, who had sat across from her eating pasta 3 days after that and believed she knew nothing. Elowen, please. Call me back. I know I messed up. I know. Listen, I know this looks bad, but I can explain everything if you just give me a chance to. Delete. I love you. I've always loved you. Whatever Leora told you, she's lying. She's not stable. She Elowen, you know me. You know who I really am. Delete. Please. The lawsuit is going to destroy everything I've built. I'm asking you, as your husband, as the man who... Delete. She set the phone down, made herself a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table where he had once told her she was too stupid to understand finances, and looked at the window and the dark Arizona night and felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Not happiness. Not yet. Something quieter and more durable than happiness. Like solid ground under her feet again. 3 weeks before the divorce was finalized, Elowen got a text from a number she didn't recognize. It was a woman's name she'd never heard. Renata, you don't know me, but I think we've been dealing with the same man. His name is Merrick Aldane. I've been seeing him for 8 months. He told me he was separated. He told me his wife was emotionally unstable and financially draining him. He told me he loved me and we were going to start over. Elowen stared at the text for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Did he call you his fresh start?" A pause. Then, word for word, Elowen put the phone down and laughed. A real laugh. The kind that comes from somewhere deep. The kind that surprises you with how good it feels. Because it was almost impressive. The consistency of it. The same script, deployed to 3 different women simultaneously. Each one told she was the only one. Each one handed the same version of the story where Elowen was the villain and Merrick was the man who deserved better. She forwarded the text to Waverly. 3, she typed. Waverly called her in under 5 minutes. Elowen, she said, and she sounded genuinely delighted in a professional way. This man has the self-preservation instincts of a house fire. Can we use it? We can use all of it. Pattern of behavior. The judge is going to love this file. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in October. Arizona is a community property state. With Blythe's financial documentation, Leora's testimony, Renata's text records, and Waverly's ironclad court filings, the settlement gave Elowen the house, her portion of the recovered business assets, restitution for the emptied joint accounts, and full assignment of the fraudulent credit card debt to Merrick. He also received, courtesy of the formal complaint Waverly had filed, a civil liability finding for the orchestrated attack, which had its own separate consequences for his business license and his professional reputation in Scottsdale's construction community, where everyone knew everyone, and Celestine from Drusilla's church had a very large mouth and an extremely active text group. Merrick lost the business partnership when Denton, calculating the reputational math, quietly dissolved it 6 weeks after the Sunday dinner. He lost the house, lost the accounts, lost the standing. Leora, when she found out about Renata, stopped returning his calls. She was navigating her own situation now, alone, pregnant, and significantly wiser about the kind of man who tells 3 women simultaneously that there is fresh start. Renata blocked him. Merrick Aldane ended up in a rental apartment in a part of Scottsdale he would not have previously acknowledged existed. with a court judgment against him, a dissolved business partnership, and a reputation in his community that had been completely, methodically, and permanently dismantled. Not by a screaming wife, not by drama or retaliation or anything that could be called an attack. By a woman with a notebook, a cousin in Dallas, an attorney named Waverly, and 4 years of being very, very quiet while she paid very, very close attention. 6 months after the divorce, Elowen opened a self-defense studio on the east side of Scottsdale. Small space, clean floors, good lighting, a mat she'd ordered herself and installed herself because she could and because there was nobody left to tell her it was too much. She named it Vass, her name before she became someone's quiet wife. Odessa co-taught the Saturday classes. Blythe came for the grand opening and cried, and then pretended she hadn't. Celestine showed up with potato salad and 2 women from her church who wanted to sign up for the Wednesday evening sessions. The class was called Reclaim. Elowen taught it herself, every week, to women of every age and every background and every story. Some of them were rebuilding. Some of them were just starting to understand what they'd buried. Some of them had never been told they were allowed to take up space. She told them, every single class, the same thing. Quiet is a strategy. It is not a sentence. And the person who underestimates you is not a threat. They are an opportunity. She had it painted on the wall above the door. She looked at it every morning when she unlocked the studio. She had been a national champion at 23 and a quiet wife at 31, and now, at 35, she was something she didn't have a word for yet. Something that had room in it for all of those things at once and wasn't diminished by any of them. She was simply herself. Fully. Finally. And Merrick Aldane, in his rental apartment across town, had the specific and daily misfortune of knowing that the woman he had called useless had become, quietly, methodically, without a single wasted move, something completely beyond his ability to manage. He had made one mistake in 4 years of mistakes. He had never once thought to ask who she was before she was his. He called her useless. He called her timid, weak, incapable, too quiet, too small, not enough, and he said it so often and so casually that the people around him started to believe it too. Then he sent someone to finish what he started. And the woman he sent her to, the woman who had folded herself down for 4 years, trying to save something that had already been stolen from her, put that woman on the floor in 3 seconds. Because strength doesn't disappear when you stop performing it. It waits. It documents. It breathes. And when it finally moves, nothing stands. He lost everything. She got everything back. And then she built something new with it. That's the story. That's the whole story. Never underestimate the woman who chooses quiet. Because quiet is just power that hasn't introduced itself yet. If this story hit you somewhere deep, like if you felt alone in your chest at any point during this video, I need you to do 3 things right now. Hit that like button. Drop a comment. Tell me, what's one thing you've buried that it's time to reclaim? And subscribe, because the next story coming to this channel is going to hit just as hard. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. We'll see you next time.